They're glorious. Let's get to work. Fist bump! Welcome back to another episode of Led by Pixels. You ask the questions, we deliver a sketchy response. Well, what's in store for us today? I'm sure there's a lot to talk about. Assistant Bot, today's question. Hey, Assistant Bot, could you be a little more productive? You are sometimes underwhelming. I guess I'll find the question myself. Right, gotta be around here somewhere. Bingo! This comes from our bud @Rexin on Twitter. He digs deep and asks, what games did you think weren't going to impress you but in fact changed your whole perspective on gaming? Good gosh, my whole perspective? I don't know that a title's ever completely twisted my views on gaming, but I think I can remember a time when a game I wasn't too enthusiastic about ripped apart some preconceived notions and introduced me to something new. I think I'll have to run you guys through a bit of story mode if I want to tackle this one properly. Well, just sit back, make yourself at home, and... Dude, I wasn't talking to you, I was talking to them. Hey, where do you keep getting those anyway? It's time. Get to work, scribble mitts. I remember my hind legs kicked up a bit, a husk of shrink wrap crinkled up into the air and collapsed onto the van's thick floor mat. I've got to worry about height, spell radius, job points? By the charred nipples of Ifrit, what the heck have I done? Halfway out from our vacation destination, driving along lush zones of deserted green field, it hit me like a perfectly charged arrow. I'd wasted my last crumple of birthday cash. I'd fallen for the old shitty spin-off like the desperate gaming dork I was. Now all I could do was wait and look and huff air. But I couldn't help it. You see, 1997 saw the release of the most infamous JRPG of that console generation. The partial antithesis of today's question, the mega-hyped cinematic experience, Final Fantasy VII. Yep, hey, I know. To some folks, time's twisted the freshness and flame of 7, but back then, dollops of game groupies in our schoolyard wouldn't clam up about it. And hey, I really enjoyed it too. I dug the attention-vacuuming twisty plot, the world's elusive secrets, the challenging optional bosses. For my pals and I, Final Fantasy VII was our first big taste of 3D JRPG greatness. It became our go-to time sink and was barely replaced until summer had begun to stale. But when I was finally ready to wander out from that materia-matted world, I was suddenly off on another journey, a real-world fantasy expedition, if you will, the old family vacation. Though I didn't have the soft spin of a PlayStation disc drive humming me through those lazy days, I had warm pink sunsets, good times, and a small wad of cash ready to bubble out from my wallet. Now, if you were like me in your younger years, you were probably deflated, shot with holes of good time memories when you had to pack up, squeeze back into the family truckster, and start the long drift back home. Well, during this one particular melancholic meander, my folks and I stopped to sprinkle our sorrows with sugary sweets from one of those huge chain supermarkets. After storming the automatic doors, getting a cool whiff of atmosphere, I did what I'd usually do, made a beeline for the electronics department. There were games to pursue, man. Well, from there it was just a matter of time before I had traded up my last scraps of birthday bucks in a rushed attempt to quell my post-vacation blues, which is understandable, right? Yeah, but this time I did something I wouldn't typically do, something kind of stupid. I bought a game, full-priced, that I knew next to nothing about. You see, I recognized a few words that popped, reignited memories of limit breaks and chibi rebel groups. Squaresoft, Final Fantasy. My cash-hurling Pavlovian response kicked in immediately. Back in the backseat of the family minivan, I combed over my fresh jewel-cased roulette spin. Final Fantasy Tactics. Final Fantasy Tactics. The screenshots on the back didn't look... well, they seemed different. Not like any turn-based fighting system I'd ever played. A 3/4 perspective and a kind of diorama. Sprite characters? Where were the animated pre-rendered backgrounds, the polygonal figures? Why did the cover look so... cheap? I didn't need any more convincing. I had just hurled my birthday bounty into a flaming, shoddy spin-off. Surely a toss-away title the publishers pushed to ride the aftershock of Final Fantasy VII's well-received release. The dun summer sun slid out beyond the horizon, and so did my hopes for one more gripping Final Fantasy experience. Now, in answering today's question, I think this is the part of the story where most folks will assume that I got home, rushed to the living room, satisfyingly snapped the game disc into my PlayStation, and was immediately encased in a massive shimmering nipple flick of awe. But honestly, I barely warmed up to Final Fantasy Tactics for a while. In fact, I was getting mega frustrated with the game in the beginning. The soundtrack, cutscenes, and complex war-infused plot all created a cool, fantastical medieval atmosphere. Awesome. It gave me hope for great things, but the gameplay was wasn't doing it for me. In fact, I was getting the snot pounded out of me. I rushed, grinded character levels, played battles over and over, and I kept making little headway. What was I doing wrong? Well, Final Fantasy Tactics was the first tactical role-playing game I had ever experienced. For those unfamiliar with the genre, take your standard RPG, magic spells, equipment, upgradable character attributes, and mix it with a bit of chess. Usually you have two teams on a kind of board, both taking turns moving their units, either trying to wipe out the opposing side or complete certain objectives. How does that sound? Does it have you on the edge of your seat, your glands drooling sweet, sweet adrenaline? Well, when I first fumbled with the concept, I certainly didn't dig it. I was used to games that were either simple enough to figure out from the get-go or organically showcased mechanics to the player through level design and progression. Basically, I was used to jumping in, playing a game, and figuring out things as I got my feet wet. So when I started Final Fantasy Tactics, what did I do? Well, I zipped past every helpful road sign the game offered me, and then, of course, berated it for leaving me bruised and stranded in the middle of nowhere. After hours of wringing my controller madly, I did the simplest, tiny little thing. I took a step back. I started over. Not wanting to give up on my beloved 90s Squaresoft, I read through the game manual and I paid attention. I actually started playing through the tutorials too, and you know what? Surprise, surprise, certain mechanics became more clear. I learned about properly equipping and deploying units. I learned how to utilize characters' abilities. Aha, battles began to get more manageable. After that, I started poking around in the overworld map menus and dabbled in the game's job system. Let me tell you, mixing jobs and abilities is one of the coolest aspects of Final Fantasy Tactics. I started losing hours, probably days to this game. Yep, just like that. A title that I once thought would rot somewhere below my banished copy of Bubsy 3D turned out to be one of my favorite games of all time. I, without a doubt, poured more hours into Final Fantasy Tactics than any other game that summer, and I really treasure the memories of my first educated playthrough. It was an interesting new experience guiding my ragtag group of warriors through Ivalice, tweaking their abilities, collecting quests, and watching the juicy plot of the War of the Lions unfold. I'm a big fan of tactical RPGs now, a genre I could have completely loathed if I didn't finally pull down my self-equipped blinders. Sometimes it's alright to play through a tutorial or two. Sometimes it won't kill you to do a little research when the info's right there in front of you. Sometimes, when you play video game roulette, there's a little chance, you could hit the jackpot in a very, very big way. Thanks for the question, friend. Assistant bot, you know what to do. Mail out that sketch. Do you have a gaming topic or genre you want me to etch my way through? Well, send your suggestions to @itsassistantbot. Any unused submissions are broken down to a soft moss to line little robo hamster cages.